Good afternoon. If I could get your attention, please. We're going to start the program. Good afternoon. That was quite a morning we had. That was a hell of a start. I want to thank all of our speakers. That was fantastic. And I want to thank you, Ray, for expertly walking us through that. Thank you for leading us also through this special lunchtime conversation we're about to have. Today, we're delighted to introduce you to our newest group of Eisenhower Fellows, the leaders from our 2023 Eastern Europe program who just arrived in the United States last week. We created this program with the strong support of our chairman, Secretary Gates, and our board of trustees. It was in the works long before Vladimir Putin launched his brutal Russian invasion of Ukraine in February of last year. Now, amid the bloodiest armed conflict in Europe since General Eisenhower commanded all Allied troops in World War II, this new EF program in the region is more timely and relevant than ever. Last fall, our trustee Jim Hovey and I traveled to several countries in Eastern Europe to meet with our Eisenhower Fellows there and help organize the nominating committees to identify, recruit, and vet outstanding ascendant leaders from the region, with a special focus on those working to strengthen the democratic self-government and protect human rights in their countries. One of our stops was Warsaw, where Jim and I had a fascinating lunch with our Eisenhower Fellow, Bogdan Klich. Bogdan is his country's former defense minister, now the leader of the opposition in the Polish Senate. I brought with me to Warsaw a photo of Bogdan we found in the EF house of him walking up the steps of the Pentagon years ago with our chairman, back when Dr. Gates was Secretary of Defense and Bogdan was Poland's defense minister. Secretary Gates was kind enough to sign it for me, and I schlepped this photo with me through 5 countries before I could finally give it to Bogdan at lunch in Warsaw. He warmly thanked me, then he kindly told me he already had one. That's all right, I said. I really came all the way to Warsaw to thank him for volunteering. Volunteering for what? He asked. For agreeing to serve as the chair of our new nominating committee we're organizing in Poland to help select fellows for this Eastern Europe program. Being the good sport that he is, Bogdan laughed and he said, sure. Thanks to Bogdan and to more than 36 other Eisenhower Fellows who generously volunteered their time across the region, we have with us today the 20 fellows from this groundbreaking Eastern Europe program. They come from the worlds of politics, media, human rights law, innovative design, counterterrorism, energy security, European integration, the arts, finance, and conflict mediation. These exceptional leaders are from Turkey, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Finland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and 4 countries that have never had an Eisenhower Fellow in 70 years: Lithuania, Latvia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Applicants from the program came from as far afield as Albania and Georgia. I want to ask these fellows in our Eastern Europe program, please stand for a moment. Join me in giving them a warm welcome. Once again, today I want to thank Bogdan for volunteering, this time for graciously accepting my invitation to fly over from Poland and talk with us about the state of affairs in Eastern Europe after nearly 2 years of war in Ukraine. And I've asked them to talk also about what does this Eisenhower Fellowship Program mean to the people of Poland and to the other countries in the region represented here. Afterwards, we'll take questions from the audience, and you can ask Bogdan or some of our Eastern European fellows about how they see things. So if you ask a question, please just identify yourself and where you're from. So thank you for coming so far to be with us, Bogdan. We're delighted you could be here. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished Eisenhower Fellow, Senator Bogdan Klich, in conversation with Ray Suarez.
Be- because I'm still a reporter at heart and I can't change my stripes. We have a plan for this conversation.
Yours,
Well,
mine, ours.
I got a green light. I'm on. Maybe I just have to talk really, really loud. How we doing now? Let
We
me
have a
let me
strong
talk
voice.
again. Oh well. Okay, I'm going to talk again, and you're going to see if you hear me. Okay. Do you have a hand mic that I can have? Do you have a hand mic that I can have? Hi, how about now? Hi, it's Ray Suarez, and I'm going to keep on talking until somebody else in the room can hear me. How
It
about
works.
now? How we doing now? Okay. I want to begin, Senator, with the headlines. Tell me about the impending election. What's at stake for Poland, and what's at stake for people who watch Eastern Europe and care about Poland?
The campaign, first of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm here in San Francisco the second time after I spent here some days in 1999 for the invitation of the Eisenhower Fellowship, being many times in Washington, other parts of the US. I really admire this opportunity to be here in this lovely, lovely city. Bon appetit to everybody. And returning to this to your question and other questions that will follow, I suppose we have still 45 minutes of the electoral campaign. After 45 minutes, there will be a silence, and a decision will come on Sunday. On Sunday, we will decide in my country about only about the civil politics, democracy in our country. So this election is about democratic shape of Poland in future. The weight and the role of this election is similar to that one of 1989, that we decided to begin the road from communism to democracy. And as you know, my country, together with neighbors in Central Europe, we should talk about Eastern Europe, but I will talk about Central Europe at the very beginning. So we decided, to choose the liberal democratic system, knowing that there is no either shape of democracy, and other forms of democratic system, like sovereign democracy in the case of Russia during last years, or illiberal democracy in the case of Hungary during last decade. These are fake shapes of democracy. There is only one democratic system, and this is the democracy based on rights and political freedoms. That's why we will take a decision during Sunday if Poland will return by the ruling camp, frankly speaking, by Polish Trumpists that affected, not only political culture. This is the goal of this election, and this is the, let's say, the value of this election. From that point of view, on Sunday, we will decide about strategic destiny of Poland for next decades.
But here's what I find puzzling. In many ways, Poland has been, since the fall of the Soviet Union, one of the brightest pupils in the class. rapid economic growth, joining the EU, becoming a stalwart and active member of NATO. The decision that your country made in 1989 has, in many ways, worked. So why are you now at this crossroads between illiberal democracy and democracy, plainly called?
There were several mistakes that my political camp is responsible for. There was a decision of minority, let's say minority of Poles in the year 2015, that decided to support one party that was anti-systemic and anti-democratic. We knew that. 37% of voters decided to support this party, when 45% decided to support various parts of democratic because of our constitution. So for last 4 years, we had the chance to show to the public opinion in our country that this is the Senate responsible for showing the right legislative methodology, consultations with people, etc., etc. But unfortunately, in our constitutional system, the Senate doesn't have the same role as the Senate in the United States. So the Senate is only an element, of legislative process, and the House can reject everything that the Senate proposes to the public opinion. So we had diminished role as the majority of democratic majority in the Senate. But what was important, it was that this majority, slight majority, survived, giving to the people in Poland that even attacked by the semi-authoritarian ruling camp, it has this power to survive and continue the work for the benefit of democratic camp in Poland.
In Brussels, certainly they'll be watching the results of Sunday's decision-making in Poland very closely. Should they be worried in Kyiv as well?
To some extent, yes. But only to some extent. There was a bipartisan approach to Belarus and Ukraine. And there was no gap between the ruling camp in Poland and the opposition concerning necessity of supporting Ukraine from the very beginning of the war. When we were informed, when Polish government was informed by representation of American services in November 2021 about the perspective of the full-scale war in Ukraine, it did a lot to enhance our partners within the European Union to go ahead and to support Ukraine from the very beginning. We did the same. We did the same, and it was not only because of the mood within the society, but because of a very deep understanding that there is no secure Poland without independent Ukraine. This principle was the rule of our security policy since the very beginning of regained independence after 1989. I would say more that there is no secure Europe without independent Ukraine. And this is the outcome that we know better right now after so many months of fighting Ukrainians against Russian domination. So the challenge is how to withdraw from the campaign, electoral campaign, in which, to our suspicion, when I say our, I mean democratic opposition suspicion, the ruling camp in Poland decided to suspend pro-Ukrainian political declarations, together with transfer of heavy weaponry to fighting Ukrainians. We were surprised. We were completely astonished when we heard that our president said once that Ukraine is sinking, and sinking Ukraine can create a danger for helping countries. Ukraine is not sinking. Ukraine is fighting. Ukraine is fighting on behalf of us. And we have to do as much as possible to support fighting Ukrainians, because they are fighting not only for their own security, they are fighting also of the European Union's project. Let's not forget that the beginning of the bloody conflict, domestic war in Ukraine in the year 2014, since the end of 2013, it was the protest of Ukrainians against pro-Russian decisions of President Yanukovych. And at stake, they have European Union's membership in the future, accession to the European Union. So since then, at least since then, I mean since the end of 2013, they are fighting for enlargement of the European Union. And among those who are, let's say, tired of Ukraine, of European Union's membership, there is Ukrainian nation that shows to the world that European integration has a strategic value.
Is there a sizable portion of your countrymen? Is there a party, a political tendency that contradicts everything that you just said, that says, no, we don't need Brussels. We don't need the unified command of NATO. We don't need 2 million Ukrainian refugees on our soil. We could be just as happy opting out of all these things. Is this a danger in Poland in 2023?
Slight majority, a slight minority.
Slight.
Yes.
So it's that close.
When you take into consideration the level of satisfaction of Polish society with the presence, with the membership of the European Union, you will find that Poles are, among other nations of the European Union, most pro-European nation, or one of most pro-European nations. Between 74 and 86% of Poles declare that membership within the European Union brought us not only money, not only enhanced security, but also, let's say, belonging to the community of values. It is important because generations of my compatriots were dying for the same values: democracy, the rule of law, human rights, political liberties. respect for minorities, etc., etc. Everything that is included into the Article 2 of the Lisbon Treaty that was adopted in the year 2009. By the way, this is the same set of values that was introduced into the preamble of the Washington Treaty in 1949. The same set of values. So even for those who are convinced that the European Union is a bank, and it is possible to use European money for the benefit of the nation or families or individual persons, there is an understanding that it is mainly the community of values, and it is necessary to be in this club of values to belong to the West.
Let's talk about belonging to the West. I don't want to sound like too much of an American. I guess I can't help it. But if I was sitting in Krakow or Gdansk or Katowice or Warsaw, and you asked me, do you want to do something to advantage the country that erased your nation from the map of Europe for hundreds of years, that invaded you in the living memory of living people, that sent in tanks whenever you acted too independent, that helped a martial law government oppress your people with soldiers on the street and paramilitaries beating people on the street? I can't imagine that they would say, well, yeah, sure, I'll do something politically that would help advantage a country like that. Given this crossroads that Poland finds itself at, I wonder if having this choice is sort of the luxury of forgetting, of 33, 34 years being a long enough time that some really important Polish history is now far in the rearview mirror and away from people's active memory. I can't imagine personally a Pole saying, yes, let's advantage Vladimir Putin. And yet, what you're telling me is that millions of your countrymen would think of that as an active possibility.
Okay, I would say I don't want to say, that Poles are or have native, let's say, anti-Russian feelings. I don't want to say, but we have our memory, our national memory, and we know what it means to allow Russia to expand. It was one of the reason or the main reason for our accession to the alliance in 1999. Bob Gates knows very well about what it means. Article 5 for member states of the alliance and 2. And we know here in this chamber that this is the political commitment that cannot be introduced or implemented in the case of fighting Ukraine. But in the case of those countries that belong to this community, to the alliance, it has to be introduced when a country or a group of countries is attacked. We were proud. We were really proud that we had the chance to introduce Article 5 of the Washington Treaty when America was attacked after 9/11. It was the first time in the history of the alliance that our governments, I was not in the government, but our governments decided to invoke this article to support the United States. By the way, we were a little bit surprised that Secretary Rumsfeld decided to use this declaration as a toolbox and decided to choose only some instruments from our declared military support. But it was a decision of the US government, and let's not comment that. But for us, countries with such a memory, historical memory, Article 5 is absolutely crucial. It, of course, reduced the gray zone of security in Central Europe, when not only Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, but also others from the former Soviet sphere of influence were invited and then accommodated to NATO. But after first invasion of Russian troops in Georgia, secondly, the famous speech of President Putin. I had the chance to listen to President Putin in Bucharest in 2008 in the delegation of Polish then President Lech Kaczyński, when he spoke around 20 minutes, even more, about Ukraine as an artificial state. Once again, Ukraine as an artificial state. Of course, it was not a school. It was not the university. He spoke about this to show us what could happen with Ukraine if we went too far in the acceleration of the process of invitation of Ukraine to our community. And at the same moment, in Bucharest, we were debating two issues. What will be the future of NATO enlargement, including Ukraine, including Georgia, and what ways we should introduce to make this process smoother. Unfortunately, at that time, there was not a decision that so-called membership action plan should be used as this main instrument to enhance Ukraine's membership. But Ukrainians received a horizon, a perspective for their membership in future. Russians understood that they should go ahead, and Russians understood that they should implement this, let's say, vision of President Putin, trying to react just after Maidan in 2013 and illegally make an annexation of Crimea and illegally enter Donbass in Russia. So for us at that time, it was an understanding that they can go farther. And we should, let me return from Ukraine for a while to Central Europe, that for the benefit, for the security of Europe, we have to have as many anchors, I would say, that would anchor the Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. One of them, before, it was our shoulder-to-shoulder mission in Iraq with American partners. The other one, it was our involvement in ISAF mission in Afghanistan, or even before ISAF, because ISAF was established in the year 2003. So just after a decision of President George W. Bush, Polish small contingent decided to go to Afghanistan. So it was our insurance. Participation in such an out-of-area mission or a group of out-of-area missions, it was our insurance for a worse time if Poland would be threatened or attacked by from the east. Yeah? Secondly, we succeeded, in convincing just after the invasion of Georgia, of convincing our allies that it was necessary to begin the process of exercises together with our allies in the framework of the Article 5 treaty. We succeeded also. Thank you, Bob, once again for that. Thanks to big, great generals of the United States Army, Jim Stavridis, for example, and others like Jim Mattis, they understood what it meant for us to have so-called contingency plans. Contingency plans, it means what will be the scenarios of the reaction if Poland and other countries of Central Europe are attacked. Bob Gates had only one hesitation, maybe more, but I know officially about one. When he decided to send Patriot batteries to Poland only for two years. Not forever. I tried to convince him that it would be important. He had his, or America had some hesitation concerning that at that time, but they arrived. They went, to Poland, and they were distributed in our soil. And it was also a sign that we have more America in Poland. Let me move smoothly, to this second principle of our security. As much America in Poland, it means more America in Poland, it means more security of my country. And the same situation is with NATO. NATOization of the presence of our allies in Poland is also important. That's why as much NATO we have on our territories in Central Europe, it means that we are more secure. Not only because of the visible assurance, but because of ability of the reaction of NATO in the worst case that one of countries from, let's say, Estonia, now Finland, after the accession, now Finland, to the south can be attacked. So you can ask, what about the European Union? Because I concentrated on the US. I said about NATO. What about the European Union that, let's not forget about that, was recognized by President Biden during his first important visit to Europe in June 2021. When President Biden came as a new president of the United States to Europe before the second Russian invasion of Ukraine, he participated in 3 summits. The first one, it was the NATO summit. It was okay and very important message that he sent from this summit. He didn't say only that America was back, but he sent a message that political unity, once again, political unity of the alliance will not be undermined as his predecessor did. Because the approach of President Donald Trump concerning political unity of the alliance was, let me be more diplomatic and not to end this sentence, yeah? You can ask what was the reason, you know, that without such a strong support for political unity of the alliance, NATO survived President Trump. I would say again that because of your American great commanders, like many of them, that they maintained military unity of the alliance when this political umbrella was weakened. But President Biden, when he came to Europe, he said, he sent this message, we will be together. We will reconstruct this political unity, political cohesion of NATO again. So for my country and for the rest of the countries of Central Europe, it was a great message, strategic message. Secondly, he participated also in the G7 summit. But he decided to take part in the European Union summit as well. It means, or it meant at that time, that he recognized the role of the European community, of the European Union. European Union without its own security union, without its own military defense union, but with CSDP and CFSP. CSDP, this is the Common Security and Defense Policy that was set up several years before, and that was, let's say, reinforced slightly before this visit. But this message sent to Europe that the US, together with the European Union, wants to go ahead, was a very important message for us. Because for us, for Poland, there are three legs of the table of our security, as this table has three legs, three external legs, I would say. Of course, the main leg, it is effectiveness of our defense system. But when speaking about external legs, the first one, it is NATO. The other one, it is the US. And the third one, it is the European Union. And the difference between the opposition, democratic opposition in Poland and the ruling camp in my country is that the ruling camp decided to, let's say, diminish the role of this third leg. And we will, let's say, reconstruct this third leg as well.
I don't want to turn this into a conversation about Donald Trump, but I also don't want to miss this moment of what you just described, because we had the unusual moment of an American president doubting the potency and importance of multilateral institutions writ large, doubting the value moving forward of an organization that had helped keep the security of Europe for 65 years, and speculating about a future American commitment to an organization it helped found. Now, I know what that sounded like here in the United States, but how was it heard in Sofia and Warsaw and Bratislava and Prague and so on? When you actually had the spectacle of an American president saying, well, maybe in the future we won't be in NATO, or maybe it's no longer a necessary organization. How is that heard in those countries that still have young political orders and still have evolving alliances and allegiances to these organizations?
Do you need my comment?
Yes, please.
It will be a sovereign decision of American society who will be the next president of the United States.
Good answer. But looking back at the period from 2017 to 2021, the awareness that there was an American president who was not committed to NATO, what did that mean to politicians of your orientation in all these various capitals?
We'll cooperate with everybody. We'll cooperate with everybody, although, once again, when I teach my students about what is the sense of NATO, I show them, I begin this chapter with the preamble of with the Washington Treaty, beginning with preamble of this treaty. And I underline, always that this is the community of values. They say, what about interests? Political national interests. So I have to say, you are right. This is not only the political, the moral community, but also community of joint interests. Let's take into account Hungary or Turkey recently. I don't want to say anything bad about Turkish or Hungarian society. I'm talking only about the policy of current governments of President Erdogan and Prime Minister Orban. These are forces that make this cohesion of NATO less visible. In the case of European Union, unfortunately, I have to say that Viktor Orban plays the role of the Trojan horse of President Putin, undermining, decisions concerning next waves of sanctions, or what was critical for security of Europe, and even more critical for developments in Ukraine, I mean delivery of weapons. Viktor Orban was against supporting delivery of weapons through Hungary. When maybe you haven't noticed that, when in the European Union we had a kind of Copernican revolution at that time, because the EU was never about delivery of weapons. European Union was never about financing delivery of weapons to any country. And this Copernican revolution, really, believe me, Copernican revolution at the beginning of last year showed to the world that the EU was ready to not only to allocate huge amount of money for military supplies to Ukraine from newly created instrument called European Peace Facility, the EU itself. I speak only about the EU, not about the member states of the EU, because member states were much more involved, but EU itself decided to allocate 5.6 billion euros for this transfer of weapons to fighting Ukraine. Something incredible before. Something incredible before. Secondly, the EU decided to set up European military training mission to train around 30,000 Ukrainians, not individuals, but battalions, brigades. to prepare them to fight better on the battlefield in Ukraine. Something also incredible, you know. The European Union decided to design for this year 11 billion euros for macroeconomic support. You can say here in the United States, President Biden and Congress decided to send 66 billion US dollars for everything. Among this great amount of money, 43, as far as I remember, billion dollars for military support. Yeah, but the US is the US, and the European Union has first steps in this field of being involved in supporting fighting Ukrainians against Russia. I'm so sorry to concentrate too much on Ukraine because there is China, Iran, necessity of speaking about NATO's evolution concerning, for example, the approach to China. It is not so clear right now, but I understand that because of this topic, not Eastern Europe, Central Europe. What about Central Europe? What about Central Europe? I have the right to speak a little bit more about Ukraine.
Being a good Polish patriot, the senator described a huge change as a Copernican revolution. For those of you who don't remember your cosmology, it was changing from the idea that the universe revolved around the Earth and asserting the idea that the Earth revolved around the sun, a pretty big deal at the time, and a Pole was at the center of it. Bogdan Klich, a pleasure to talk to you. Do we have time for questions? One question, two questions. So make them quick. Questions for Senator Klich? Yes.
Thank you very much. This was brilliant speech. Can you hear me?
Big voice.
Thank you very much. It was a brilliant speech. Really appreciate many things you said. I'm afraid we are facing different situation in Slovakia, as you know. And I'm afraid we are on the Hungarian track. It's not only us. There are many more countries in European Union, and it has one same tool why it works like this. Misinformation, disinformation, Russian propaganda run through American tools, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, and unfortunately also Chinese TikTok. What to do with that, Senator? Please help us.
I have the feeling that this Russian influence on political life is more visible. I don't want to say about capacity of this influence, comparing Slovakia, Poland, and other states of Central Europe, but it is more visible in your case because you have more independent organizations, I mean NGOs, that concentrated on this issue for several years. By the way, supported strongly by National Endowment for Democracy. So thanks a lot, Americans, for doing that, also in Slovakia. So, you know better what is the possible level of involvement in this process of disinforming your society about the European Union, about NATO, about the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and about Ukrainian attitude. You have better understanding. We in Poland, we do not have such a good set of instruments. Although my daughter He is one of the specialists of disinformation and fake news, working for the biggest association in Poland, but they concentrate on our domestic disinformation.
One more. It's got a mic over there.
Pilvitorsti fellow from Finland 10 years ago. First a comment and then a question. The comment, thank you very much for talking about European Union as a value community and its importance actually now for countries like not only Ukraine, but Georgia, Moldova and Western Balkans. We, I think, see a very different momentum in Europe and I think it's worth recognizing also globally. And I say this as a relatively new director of one of the EU agencies, the only one that works outside the Union in education and training called European Training Foundation. But my question actually relates to my own background and your current work. So I was a member of the parliament and state secretary in three ministries for the last 10 years. And when Dr. Gates this morning said something about US politics being in troubles, but elsewhere it's better, I already wanted to comment then that, well, I myself decided this year not to run. My co-fellow 10 years ago from New Zealand, David Clark, who was member of the parliament and a minister, decided not to run. Our common friend, who is very closely being Eisenhower Fellow from Holland, again decided not to run. And I think all of us have taken that decision exactly based on the role of social media, what it means to you and your actually family, and how it influences elections so that normal campaign doesn't do anymore. You should somehow sacrifice to yourself something you are not anymore ready to do. So how do you see this as a very experienced politician? Now you're looking from the EU perspective, because I think this is really a threat to democracy much more broadly than we perhaps recognize. And perhaps Eisenhower Fellowship should have really a future of politics and democratic participation conference and really tackle this, because I think if we decide not to run, many of us, I think it's a really symptomatic actually. Thank you.
Very briefly, one of the main projects of the European Commission during the last 4 years, we are approaching the end of the term in office of Ursula von der Leyen and the Commission, and we are also approaching elections in Europe in 2024. And they will be crucial for the future of this project, I mean European Community. One of the crucial decisions concerning the, let's say, sustainability of democracy, it was so-called democratic package. And in this democratic package, Ursula von der Leyen proposed 2 regulations concerning social media. Social media that can either be a partner in democratic survival or an enemy in that, responsible for democratic decline. One of them, it is the act on digital services, when the other one is the act on digital markets. And they created a new framework in which if the member states decide to follow them, we could be better immunized against those social media that can undermine the democratic process. What is at stake? It is sustainability of our institutions, because as Tony Blair's institute several years ago described, there are of course various kinds of populism, but mainly in Eastern Europe, this populism was violent. He took into account especially what was going on in countries like Russia at that time. When Central European populism was non-violent, but was responsible for affecting democratic institutions and procedures. It is the case of Hungary. To some extent, it is the case of Poland. When the third populism, typical for Western Europe, and before the assault of people connected with Donald Trump in January on Capitol Hill, it was the populism that undermined, let's say, democratic culture of discussion, debate, etc., without affecting democratic institutions. Institutions were stable. Yeah. So when taking into account this populist threat, I would say that those regulations can play a crucial role trying to put a framework, on TikTok, Twitter, or X now, Facebook, etc. This is absolutely important, for the benefit of democracy in future.
Just a short time ago, the Associated Press reported that the White House has confirmed that 1,000 shipping containers filled with military hardware has been transferred from North Korea to Russia. Whether Poland remains a stalwart member of the front line against the Russian invasion in Ukraine, pretty important stuff. Good luck for your parties in the election this week. A pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. And we'll reconvene for the next plenary back in the other room. And I know that you will move briskly and efficiently.